Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Representative Town Meetings Committee meeting. Today is March 15th, 2021. I'll ask that everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So I've scrambled the agenda for today because Mr. DeWitt, who will be available tonight for questions about the tax relief ordinance, has his hands quite full with the Board of Finance budget hearing. So we'd like to give him a little. So Chris, are you on?
Yes, ma'am, and thank you very much for moving me up in the agenda.
My pleasure. Thanks for being here. I don't think we need to do another presentation. You did a very good, thorough presentation last month, but what we're doing tonight for everyone's benefit is we're having the second hearing of the Senior and Disabled Tax Relief Ordinance amendments that were referred by the Board of Finance and then considered by the Legislative and Administration Committee of the RTM. So Mr. DeWitt and I believe Mr. Murray too. Ross, are you on? I think I see you there. Yep. They are both available tonight to answer any questions that the RTM may have about these amendments. So does anyone have any questions or comments? We'll vote on these amendments on Monday at our regular meeting. Give people a minute to just let me know if they have any questions.
Oh, I was under the impression you were voting tonight. My apologies.
Oh, that's okay. So yeah, sorry if I wasn't clear. So this is we always have a committee meeting the week before the regular meeting. And that's when we try to get everyone to come so we can hear from people. And then we'll vote at our regular meeting, which is Monday.
Got it. Thank you.
So. You're welcome. I don't see any questions or comments. So thank you both, Mr. Murray and Mr. DeWitt, for being here tonight. And I don't think you need to be here next week. I'll let you know if there's a request from RTM folks, but I really appreciate your time. So thank you.
Great. Okay. Thank you for moving us up.
Sure, my pleasure. So we will move on to item 3 on the agenda, which is the Burr roof replacement bonding resolution. And Mr. Papa George is here, I believe, to talk to us about that.
Yes, good evening, everyone. So this is not for the funding. This is just for the reimbursement, for the state being able to file for state reimbursement. There's three. There are 3 resolutions that must come before you and be voted on in order for us to be eligible for state reimbursement. They are the same that you see before you for all of our reimbursement projects. And if you have any questions about them, I'd be happy to answer that.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions on this item for Mr. Papa George? I guess not. I don't see any questions for you. Thank you very much for coming tonight. And will you speak again about the resolutions for items 8 and 9, or are they included? They're all the same issue, right? They're all for the reimbursement?
Yeah. Correct.
Okay. So just to clarify, folks, Mr. Papa George is speaking about item 3 on our agenda and items 8 and 9. So just one more shot to see if anyone has a question or a comment. I think they were pretty clear, so I don't see any questions. So thanks so much for being on the call with us.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks. Next item is vehicles and equipment bonding resolution. With Mr. Marsilio, and also road paving, which is items 4 and 5. Mr. Marsilio, It's nice to meet you. I'm not sure we've all met you yet, so welcome to Fairfield. I think you're on mute. No, can't hear you. Oh, looks like you might be unmuted. Can you try now? No. Okay.
John, is it possible that the phone itself is muted?
I hear promising noises. I think it's working out, huh? I can't hear you.
It looks like he's trying to connect earbuds, Karen.
Yes,
His picture
I see
popped
that.
up.
Yeah. Can't hear. He can hear us, Mr. Kelly, but we can't hear him. So I don't know if that's probably an issue on his end.
I'm afraid it likely is. John, if you were
Yeah.
plugging into your computer, you'd have to switch to computer audio from phone audio.
Oh, the joys of remote meetings, huh?
On the unmute button, there's a little down arrow. If you click that, you can change your input to perhaps your headphones or your computer's microphone.
Thanks, Matt. I wonder, Mr. Marsilio, would you mind if we went to Mr. Schmidt while you're working that out? Okay. Thank you. So, Mr. Schmidt, Jared Smith will be talking about items 6 and 7, which are bond resolutions for ECC and capital expenditures. So, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and the RTM. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Okay. I had a PowerPoint presentation ready to go through ECC. Do you want me to go through that quickly? Or do you want me to just give an overview?
Great.
Okay, why don't I do that?
I think PowerPoint would be great. Thanks.
All right, I'm going to share this. Hang on one second.
Okay.
Really quickly, can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yay.
Oh, you can?
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Would you like to switch back to Mr. Marsilio, or you want me to continue?
I think if Mr. Marsilio doesn't mind, we could just continue because we started with you, if that's okay.
Okay.
I deserve it.
All right, can you see that?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
All right. So I'm presenting tonight on the Emergency Communications Center, which is it had been approved in the past, and there were some developments and needed to be some changes to it. So I'm going to go through that. This is our cooperative dispatch center with Westport. And what we're looking for is an approval from you to move forward with an additional appropriation of bonding money to be spent. And so despite the increases The amount that is being proposed to spend for FY22 is still lower than what it was last year in FY20. The partnership with Westport remains strong. The control board that governs the ECC formally cast a vote and unanimously approved the additional funding and the center to move the center forward. And the increased capital costs that we're looking for approval on are to increase the stability and the security and reliability of the center going forward. So some of the challenges that have popped up since its approval have been, and this obviously predated me coming here, were the general challenges of coronavirus and also a location change of the proposed ECC of the center. And so the new location is going to require additional investments in the building itself and also in the infrastructure. We consider these to be short-term problems. Sacred Heart continues to be a great partner for us. They are going to continue to host the center at no lease cost to the town. There's going to be zero lease cost to us for this, which is fantastic. Westport Police and Fire remain committed to the center, as well as New Canaan Fire. The state's financial assistance has increased since this was originally approved, and the center remains a very viable financial venture for us, despite the challenges. So what happened when this was approved, there was an interlocal agreement between Fairfield and Westport, and so there haven't been any changes to date to that agreement. I just want to cover really quickly what some of the highlights of that agreement are. As I mentioned before, there's a control board which consists of the police and fire chiefs from both the towns, as well as the chief elected officials. So that's the governing body of the center. The capital expenditures, which we're looking for approval, are split evenly between Fairfield and Westport. So it's a 50-50 venture on the capital costs. With regard to operating expenditures and what's in the budget for next year, those costs are split between Fairfield and Westport, 2/3 and 1/3. And that's pretty much based on the population and call volume of the center calls. The agreement allows other towns to enter into the center. So after it's established, new towns will be allowed to come in. They would obviously be charged an additional fee, a service fee, in order to enter into it. And all of the state grants that come on an annual basis will go into the center. So this is a comparison between what passed, what was in the approved plan, and what's in the revised plan from a capital standpoint. And you get a sense from looking at this pretty quickly what's driving it. It's the renovation costs that are about $730,000 difference. That's the increase. And the IT costs are increasing it by almost $350,000. And the total additional cost from when this plan was initially approved is about $1.1 million, which is the approval that we're looking for, the increased appropriation to spend officially $1,116,940. So, and again, the way this is split up, the way the capital budget is split up, it's 50-50. So Fairfield's portion is just over $2 million. However, originally the state's contribution was going to be $250,000 to our portion of it, and they upped that to $300,000. So the revised amount that Fairfield will have to spend on the capital portion of this is 1.7, and the same thing for Westport. So over the past year and a half or so, the state has increased its contribution. Going forward on an operating basis, you can get a sense there of what the differences are in the FY20 budget last year. So this is for Fairfield under the, under the current arrangement, not in the combined dispatch center arrangement that's being proposed, and that was passed last year. But this is the current arrangement where the total cost for Fairfield was $1,850,000. That, and you can see that in the FY20 actual column, and that's offset by a state grant of $136,000. So the net spend on an operating basis is just over $1.7 million. So and then what happened when Westport comes in, we will get additional state money, an additional state grant, in New Canaan as well. When New Canaan comes in, the only piece that they have of this is their fire calls for fire situations is $70,000. So that increases the revenue to us. And so if you look in the last column, the FY22 requested, you'll see the total cost is almost $2.9 million. That's offset by the state grant and also by New Canaan. And then you get to a net cost of $2.5 million. We pay 2/3 of that, and Westport pays the other third. So the key thing to look at here is that our final, at the bottom line, our final number for FY22 would be $1.693 million. And that's slightly less, but less than what it was last year at $1.713 million. So it's still, you can see there are still savings right away once this is implemented. This just kind of recaps what I was just explaining. I do want to point out a couple of caveats. One is that there are going to be increases in salary related to this. The collective bargaining agreement for the communicators expired in 2019. So there will be salary increases once that agreement is approved, the new agreement is approved. The center is also going to experience some annual information technology costs in its operating budget at about $90,000 a year, and that'll start in 23. So it's not in the 22 budget because that is a package deal that has all the information technology costs within the capital side of the budget. But again, starting in FY23, we will see the IT costs increase by about $90,000, and that'll be an annual recurring costs. So the next step is to, obviously, we're looking for approval from the RTM. It went through the Board of Selectmen, went through the Board of Finance, and then to begin its construction as soon as possible. Earlier today, the Board of Selectmen voted to approve the contract with the contractor, and that passed. And so we have everything in place. So once the RTM gives approval, we can begin construction on this and the renovation of the center. We need to develop a fee structure with the goal of creating a fee structure that's uniform for any future towns that come into the center. And there are really three components to this. One is that we want to be sure that the towns are contributing to the debt service or in some way helping us to pay the investment, the capital investment that we've already made and will make into the center. In addition, we want them to contribute, proportionally what their proportion would be to the ongoing annual operating costs, and also make a contribution to any future capital needs. So there would be a capital reserve account that we would expect them to contribute to. So this is kind of like running a business, and we're really looking to balance what is going to make it viable for the town, so that the town of Fairfield can continue to gain savings and increase its savings. And also we need to take into account the the other towns coming in and make sure that they're able to afford whatever structure we set up. And so, so that's what we're working on now. And then to start courting those other towns. We haven't started that process. We know that there are towns that are interested, and we'll begin to do that, and hopefully bring those towns in. Once they come in, it's really we get revenue from them, and we get their state contribution. So when a town comes into the center, they contribute whatever we decide and determine to be their their proportionate cost to us. But in addition to that, the state will kick in an amount each year as well. And that amount, depending on the town, will be somewhere between $75,000 and $125,000 a year, just for the state's part of it. So, and that's revenue to the center, to us, to Fairfield. So every town that we bring in is going to help us out. At some point, we'll hit a critical mass where we will need to fill another station. But other than that, probably the first town or two will not require any additional cost. And that's the end of the presentation. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Thank you. That was very helpful. Does anyone have any questions? You can put your, I see some hands. Representative Beauvais.
Hi. I was wondering, since this center is going to be serving other towns, is there an increased liability? Do we have insurance if anything happens and their town sues us? Those towns sue us for something?
So this
Flooding.
the center is going to be maintained strictly by Fairfield. So we are and initially when it starts, I'm in the interlocal agreement. I, as a CFO, I'm named as the CFO for the center, and there will also be an administrator, a law enforcement administrator of the center. So we will have, this will fall under the responsibility of Fairfield, and I'm saying that because yes, there will be, there will likely be some additional potential liability that has been included in the administrative portion of this budget, of the operating budget.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Representative Perugini.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Schmidt. Thank you for the presentation. Bill Perugini, District 9. Can you elaborate on the negotiation for the operating costs? I understand the split for the capital costs, and I guess I understand the rationale. We're about twice the population of Westport and presumably twice the volume of calls. That being said, this center is being currently housed in a university that resides in our town. How did we determine the 2/3, 1/3 split for the operating costs?
I'll talk really quickly. I know that Chief Calamaris is on, and Captain Buccarati, I believe, are on as well. And this was something that predated me being here. But generally speaking, and I'll leave it to the PD to talk more about it. But it's just that it's based on I believe it was based on the call volume, the proportion of call volume, and the proportion of population. Chief, you want to weigh in here?
Sure, Chief Calamaris. Thank you, representatives, and thank you, Jared, for that presentation. Captain Buccarati is also on here. He could probably speak more specifically, but to your question, Representative Perugini, it was call volume, population, and I think we averaged over time the amount of call volume per year, and then it was a calculation based on that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we all know life is not about what's fair, but about what you're able to negotiate. Westport's in a much healthier financial position than the town of Fairfield. Can we take another bite at the apple? Can we renegotiate those terms?
So those terms were agreed upon at the time. We're also taking on They have an interlocal agreement with New Canaan Fire, and we have honored that interlocal agreement with the benefit of that $70,000 state grant. So I don't think the negotiation is up. What I will say, I don't think there's any room for negotiation with respect to Westport. However, if we do bring on other towns, Jared has agreed to look at some type of formula to bring on the other agencies or municipalities that are willing to come on board. In that case, they will not be partners. They will be clients of ours. And with that, we will accept grant money and possibly some, a service fee, as he indicated, to apply for to come onto the ECC.
Yeah, I think if there's any way we could further defray our cost, it would be prudent to do so. Again, we're in some pretty desperate times here, and we certainly, the municipality that we're currently partnered with is in a much better position than we are. So if there's any way that we could do that, I would encourage all of those involved to pursue that.
Thank you.
Representative Pastilli?
Sharon Pastilli, District 3. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I'm not sure who my questions are for. So however it's appropriate to respond, that would be great. I have a couple of questions. The first one is, I just wanted to confirm that the head count are all hours. So if our volume increases, the head count that increases is Fairfield head count. Is that correct?
When you're referring to headcount, what are you referring to? Dispatchers that work in the center?
Yes.
Yes. So in the interlocal agreement, we had a consultant establish a minimum staffing level for the amount of call volume that we would have over the two municipalities joining together, and then what kind of burden it would put on the center if we were to take on maybe a third or a fourth municipality. And we are currently contracted at 22, if you want to call it headcount, or 22 personnel that will be in the center. And that is 15 from Fairfield, which is what we are allocated currently, and 6 from Westport, which they are currently allocated, and then 1 additional employee that will be employed after the development of the center.
Okay. And then is there is there a term, like, for the number of years we're expected this to go on for? Like, is it finite or is it an open-ended term?
Well, the Board of Selectmen just agreed to a 25-year bond resolution, and we have a 25-year lease with Sacred Heart University. The dispatching center is finite. It is something that we need unless some kind of great technology comes out that I'm not aware of. I think we're going to still need to use people to take 911 calls. So I would think for the time being, it is finite.
Okay, great. And then I wanted to follow up on Representative Beauvais' question. Just something that comes to mind is, like, in terms of insurance, it probably would make sense for us to look into if we need insurance beyond just what we have for ourselves, just because now we're responsible for other people's dispatch calls. It's just a comment. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Moderator, you're muted.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments on this item before we move on to the other bonding project that Mr. Schmidt will discuss. Okay. Jared, do you want to address the other item?
You're on mute, Jared.
Thanks. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, so the next is the approval of a package of non-recurring bonding projects.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you for a second? I think Representative Gerber might have had a question on the last item and I missed his chat.
Sure.
Bill, did you have a question? Representative Gerber? Bill? Okay, I guess we'll come back to that. Sorry for the interruption, Jared.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
That's all right, no problem. So this is for a package of non-recurring bonding projects. And just a refresher, those are projects that are under $1 million, individual projects under $1 million. The total of this package would be $4,303,000. The town portion of that is $3,678,000. And there is one project that is from the Board of Education at $625,000. On page 52 of the PDF of the backup, you'll see there are referred to as the 14 points document, which have all the details of the projects. And there are 13 of them are town, and again, one of them is Board of Education projects. So that's the that's the approval that we're looking for.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions on this package of items? Mr. Representative Gerber is going to try again.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. It was on the call center. I just wanted to make sure that I understood the liability question. So we are insured, or we are indemnified, Jared, for other towns?
We will be in, the center will be insured, and the employees will become, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief Calamaris, but those employees will become Fairfield employees. So they will, like any other employees of the town, and like any other space that we lease, it will be insured.
What I mean is, if something happens and our system goes down, or someone does something that they shouldn't do and doesn't respond appropriately to a call, is there liability for the town?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Chief, I don't know if you have a response to that.
Yeah, so the dispatchers will be our employees, and if the dispatcher makes a mistake or does something that creates liability for the town, then yes, we would be responsible. We would kind of get that risk, I guess you could say. The officers responding for the other towns, we would not assume that risk. So we would only assume the risk for if the dispatchers did something wrong within the dispatch center. But they would be covered under our normal liability insurance.
Okay, they would be covered. I'm only asking because you hear from time to time dispatchers not responding appropriately to emergencies in other towns, not in our town. But if something like that were to happen, it sounds like we would be liable, and that type of liability can be probably pretty big, right? So is that covered? Is that sort of covered under the insurance policy or is it indemnified when we sign service contracts? I guess you're saying no, that we're exposed to that sort of risk, which seems like a pretty big risk.
Well, it's a big risk, but we do have other towns paying into at a pretty high price. So it's just like a business. If you're the other town is buying into the center to buy down risk and liability. So we do assume that risk and some liability. That's only obvious, and in the profession that we're in, it's a given. It's a risk that you take.
Absolutely, but you can cover that. You can cover that kind of risk with insurance, right?
Yes, we currently have Kerma, which is our insurance that we use for the town.
Okay, so that I guess that's the question for you or Jared is, that type of performance risk is included in the operating costs that you showed us. The insurance for that performance risk.
That's right.
Okay, I should have asked it that way
Yep.
to begin with. Yep. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I don't think there are. So thank you all very much for coming tonight. We appreciate it. Take care.
Well, thanks.
And now we will return to Mr. Marsilio.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, once again, for the very first time, I'm pleased to meet all of you, and I look forward to interfacing with you and stand ready to answer any of your questions at any time if you ever want to call me directly. I'm here this evening to discuss the vehicle and equipment replacement bonding. I came on board right after Thanksgiving, and for better or for worse, I was witness to some early snow responses, and it was apparent to me at that time that the equipment that's in place for the town presently is by and large inadequate to address some of these snowstorms, many of even the ordinary ones. We have 26 plow routes in town and 26 drivers and 26 trucks. And something as nagging as a windshield wiper motor can take a truck out of service and leave one whole district of the town unserved. So I spent a lot of time with the fleet manager and the supervisory staff. We identified those trucks that were either unsafe or unreliable or both, and we developed a 5-year plan for what I'll call heavy equipment replacement. And they are items of heavy equipment which generally cost more than $100,000. I would also like to think that in general, in defense of bonding for 20 years for these items, that they do have those sorts of life. These trucks that are itemized in the capital packet have trucks which, the youngest of which is 25 years old. The others are 30 years old. We rely on these vehicles, and it's more than just snow plows, it's other vehicles which we also have ongoing problems with. And so I've always felt that heavy equipment, if properly maintained and properly operated, these sorts of items have a lifetime of 20 years or better. And it is appropriate to bond these items for 20 years. So I said before that we developed a 5-year plan. The 5-year plan forecasted our needs for the next 5 years. And at the Board of Finance meeting, the board realized that they had not financed or invested in the rolling stock for many years. And it was their decision to roll 3 years of requests into one bond package. So the bond package that you are asked to review this evening are the requested vehicle replacement items for this year, next year, and the following year. And that's what that total is. That is on your bond resolution.
Okay, thank you. I just my 2 cents is I'm really glad to see this. I think the requests for replacing vehicles from DPW were denied year after year for a while, as you say. Board of Finance is recognizing. I know it's really needed. Representative Georgiadis.
Hi, Drew Georgiadis. Very nice to meet you, Mr. Marsilio. I do echo Ms. Wackerman's comment. We've been trying to get these trucks approved, $500,000 annually. I think we had a 20-year plan, long-term plan, and every year the $500,000 would be cut. So here we are. So my question to you is, if these trucks last 20 years, and it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're spreading this need over a 3-year period, do you think that too heavily, it's 3 years and then, in 2019, 18 years, well, boom, we'll get another really big hit. Should it be spread over 5 years? I know you don't exactly know when things are going to break down, but could you please address that?
Sure. So we have a 5-year plan. That was the original plan, and the 5-year plan that I put forth indicated that in this year we would buy 4 snow plows plus 3 other items, and in the following year we would buy 3 snow plows and 3 other items, and in the third year we would buy 2 snow plows and 4 other items, and then in the fourth year we would buy 1 snow plow and 4 other items, and in the fifth year 1 snow plow and 1 other item. And my recommendation would be that you fund 1 new plow every year for the snow plow fleet, and you will be able to bring the average age of the plow fleet down to just under 20 years, which is where you want it to be. So we have a 5-year plan that we submitted. We subsequently developed a 10-year plan, and after that we even developed a 15-year plan. We have it available if you'd like to see it. It covers all of the equipment in the yard. We have it for both the heavy equipment, which is this, and what we call the service vehicles, which are the pickup trucks and small little dump trucks and those items which do service other than, which also do snow plowing, by the way. So
In the past, we dealt with a lot with dump trucks. We didn't necessarily focus specifically on the snow plow. So when you say other vehicles, I know there's a lot of dump trucks that use for road paving and other items. So does that fall into what you say other vehicles? Because I know those can be extremely expensive, right? Aren't they like $500,000 a piece?
Well, in this first year, the other vehicles are your boom truck, which does the tree trimming, 70-foot boom.
Yep.
That's replacing a 21-year-old vehicle that is having constant problems now is down more than it's working. And we also have a backhoe, little backhoe loader. And we have another flatbed truck with a lift gate that we use to move everything you can think of around. In next year's budget, we have rubber tire loaders. We have 10-wheel dump trucks, the much larger ones. And in the third year, we have sweepers and chippers and another bucket lift truck. So yes, it's not only snow plows. That's what prompted the real analysis and because that made it evident to me that this was our first order of business. We can't keep the town safe, and believe me, I've been through many emergencies. If you don't have the tools to use to keep roads open, whether it's trees down or snow on the ground or hurricanes, flooding, whatever you can possibly anticipate, you're putting the town at risk. And what's even beyond that, you're putting the operators at risk if you don't give them equipment.
No, I understand that. I appreciate that. There's also been, I know, a lot of job elimination and retirements at DPW. Are we going to, I know the town in the past did all the maintenance on their own vehicles. Will we still be able to do the maintenance in-house with the town of Fairfield? Or who will be maintaining these new vehicles and our old vehicles as we ramp up over this 5-year period?
Yes, there's been no reduction in the fleet maintenance crew. And to be quite honest, if you make the proper investments in new equipment, the maintenance portion of it becomes, over time, becomes more and more efficient. And you're able to devote more time to these items of equipment because it isn't the nagging items anymore that are wasting your time. It's the technology that's in these vehicles, and it's just the general maintenance that you can devote yourself to.
Okay, thank you very much.
Representative Gerber. Pardon? Oh, Bill?
He left, Karen.
He left? Okay. Representative Iacono.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Pam Iacono, District 8. Mr. Marsilio, you mentioned that you have a full plan put together for 5, 10, and 15 years that you would be able to send that to us. Would you mind doing that and just sending us a copy through the moderator?
Of course.
Thank you. It's been long awaited by many of us, so we really appreciate you putting that together. That's all I have. Thank you.
It's the only way to approach something like this.
100%, and it's why funding has always fallen apart. So thank you very much for doing it.
What do they say? You never applaud the tenor for clearing his throat.
We'll come back to Representative Gerber if I think he might have lost a connection. So, are there any other questions before we have Mr. Marsilio discuss the paving? Okay, would you mind going ahead and telling us about the bonding for paving?
So the bonding for the paving is somewhat unusual in that we focused on the heavy equipment and the bonding presentations, and in a selectmen's meeting, now help me with this one, Jarrett, was it the selectmen's meeting or the Board of Finance, where it was the Board of Finance meeting, where they had mentioned to us, or to me, that, well, you know, you had $1 million in your paving budget last year, and you have another million that you're requesting this year. What did you do with the $1 million we bonded? And of course, the first thing I did when I arrived was examine every single budget, and I never saw $1 million that was bonded. So what happened was it emerged that at last year, the Board of Selectmen had reduced the paving budget in the operating budget by $1 million. And they decided that they would take the $1 million that they reduced that paving budget by and put it in the bonding budget. And they voted to do that, and they did it. And this ended up being lost somehow in the housekeeping of approving that bonding. So the Board of Finance took that up and said, well, you know, we heard about that, but okay, now we're going to vote on that, and we'll put it in this year's bond package. And it wasn't initiated by me. It was initiated through the budget hearings last year, and this is more of a housekeeping issue, because that $1 million was never invested in town's road infrastructure, obviously. You're muted, Karen.
Thank you, John. I'm doing your tricks now with the.
It's catchy.
Does anyone have any questions on this item on paving?
And just to let you know that the other initiative that we've taken is to bring in a firm to come in and analyze all of our roads in town and do a 10-year plan for road paving also, something that's objective. It's going to be done empirically, where it's laid out with costs and recommendations, and they will be graded by usage and by condition, and we'll take that and we'll be basing our budgets from here on out on something that's scientific, and that will start in months, in 2 or 3 months.
Great. Representative Georgiadis?
Hi, thank you, Mr. Marsilio. I have 2 questions. So we've had a plan for our roads, you know, the 20 years, you know, you pave, you use the tar, you try to make sure the roads, have you looked at the ones that we had in the past that seem to be working really well? And those were all done in-house. So if you could explain what a consultant would bring and how much the consultant would cost. Would that budget who paid for the consultant come out of the DPW budget, or where would the cost of the consultant, because we've managed to do this before without a consultant.
Okay, so the cost of the consultant ought to come out of the paving budget. It is the same as any other capital project that you would pursue. The value of the third party eyes and ears is that it, number one, is more comprehensive. I was told that there was only one time when we were able to have some fellows who were on light duty or some seasonals, or it was kind of informally done, to go and actually walk the streets, walk the sidewalks, and flip a coin and determine what the condition of the roads are. That's
I
only
don't
one
think
part.
that was the case, but okay, maybe.
I
Okay.
only know what I was
You said it.
told.
You were told, right? Okay.
Right. And I have seen the analysis that exists presently, and there was some effort put into it, but from what I've seen, I don't agree with it. There's a lot more that goes
This is
into it.
not your skill set, so this is not your skill set, so you're thinking of a consultant is necessary?
Yes. It is my skill set, and I think a consultant is necessary because there's more to the prioritization of road paving than just the condition. There's categories of roads, there's traffic counts, there's the actual use of the roads, does it have a curb, doesn't it? Does it have a sidewalk, doesn't it? You can walk the road and determine whether the drainage is adequate or not. I put my trust in the engineers and as I said, in empirical analysis and not a mere drive-by and as I said, more or less a coin flip.
Okay, how much does a consultant charge on a percent of what the project will cost, or will that be evident in the information we get, the cost of the consultant?
We haven't hired a consultant yet.
Okay. And my final question, thank you very much for that. And I've only been on the RTM 6 years, I think. I always thought the paving budget went into the annual budget. So this money that you're asking for is separate from what will go into the paving budget that we're going to be looking at over the next month and a half, or what we allocated last year? Is this like emergency paving money? I don't understand why it's not why it's a separate line item. And if you could just help me out there, I'd appreciate it.
Your question is, why isn't it a separate line item?
No, why isn't it just in the budget? This
Well,
is separate, right? Is this separate?
no, it would be part of fees or part of paving or, it's yet to be determined exactly which line item it will come from.
Okay. I'll listen, maybe I'll figure out what's going on. So thank you.
Representative Pistilli.
Sharon Pistilli, District 3. Hi, Mr. Marsilio. I can't see you anymore. I could see you. I don't know what happened. So I had a question. So I understand you've been in the role since November. A couple of years ago, we received a pretty detailed presentation that outlined paving, and my understanding is that there were individuals that are actually assigned by zone to keep an eye on the roads, and that it was a pretty detailed process in terms of what the surfacing process would be at what time. And it was, we had a ton of historical data on it. Have you reviewed this plan, and have the people that are in DPW, have they explained how they were responsible for different zones? If this is something we've done in-house, and given just in general the current economic climate, I'm really concerned with hiring a third-party provider when this is something that, as far as I've only served for 2 terms, but in the last 4 years, it's an in-house job. It's not something we hire to the outside for.
Look, I've reviewed what's in place and I've reviewed the plans that we have. And in my opinion, they are inadequate to run $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million annual budget for roadway rehabilitation. I'll give you a good example. We were in Trumbull. We were going to pave Madison Avenue up by Tashua Golf Course. And first inclination was it was alligator cracking in the road and it looked like it was deteriorating. We put a budget together and we were awarded the money and we were going to go and do that. It was $1 million. But before we did it, we decided we better do some subsurface investigation. And what do you think we found? We found that there was 11 inches of asphalt there. Now, what does that mean? That means if we had milled that road and put in 3 inches of asphalt, that in 3 years, through reflection, which is the term that's used for cracks below the surface to rise to the surface, you might as well have just burnt your money on the road there. It would have been a waste of money. You can't see through the ground. You don't know the thickness of asphalt. You don't know many of the components of that construction that you have to know before you make a prudent investment in your roads. That's my opinion. I don't think you have anybody in Public Works, including me, who can walk down a road and tell you exactly what has to be done to that road to justify a 20-year investment.
So, Mr. Marsilio, are there records going back 20 years of the paving of our roads? Because I was in the presentation that we received about 3 years ago at budget time. You know, we were presented with the fact that there are records going back that show exactly what's been done and exactly what the schedule is. It's already been planned.
Well, look, I'm sure there are. I haven't seen them. I mean, that portion of the budget.
I think it's really important to know that, because I think then we'd be hiring a third party for something we've already done in-house, and we're under a very tight budget right now. So I think it would be a really good idea to look back and see what those plans are. I'll go back to the meeting 3 years ago and see if I can identify the presentation. If I find it, I'll send it to you. But meanwhile, if you find it and could send it to all of us, I think that'd be really important to know.
Okay, if I find it, I'll do that, and you may do the same. I promise you I would look at it.
Yeah, I would really like to see us not hire a third party for that if we can do it in-house, and we've already paid someone to do the work just because budgets are so tight right now, and we're trying to do the best for the taxpayers. That's all. But thank you for coming on board and for all that you're doing. I know it was a crazy snow year, so please thank your crew for everything they did to keep us safe this winter.
Well, you have a good crew, and you're lucky to have that, because that doesn't occur just anywhere. So I give them a lot of credit, especially with the equipment they had to use.
But if you could pass that on from all of us, you know, we really appreciate what they do. So thank
I'll
you.
do that. Yep.
Representative Iacono.
Thank you, Pamela Iacono, District 8. I actually just want to thank you for getting a consultant, and I want to thank you for acknowledging that we need to do more there. And to my fellow representatives, if you haven't read the DPW audit, I highly suggest that you do that. That is one of the things that's highlighted in there is paving, and it is talked about what should be done and what should be outlined as we examine budgets as a transparency issue. And I see this as a perfect solution, or a portion of a perfect solution to address some of those issues. So I am very happy that you're doing this. I think it's a small price to pay to get a long-term work product that we're about to make major investments in, and I want to do it right. I think this is something we should do. I think that people that really should go back and read what the independent auditor put forward on our entire DPW system. So thank you. It's refreshing.
Representative Patisse.
Hi, Frank Patisse, District 10. Mr. Marsilio, I just wanted to ask, isn't it somewhat of an industry standard to hire a consultant to, evaluate the PCI index of the pavement and to make your paving list off of that?
Well, in the last two municipalities that I worked in, that's the approach that was taken. As I said, it's scientific, it's empirical. It doesn't look complicated to resurface a road, but the prudent expenditure of that money requires that the examination be done by engineering level people, taking into account all of the elements that are needed to prioritize and to select the proper application of rehabilitation.
Thank you. And I heard some people reference the presentation we had a few years ago. It was my recollection that there was someone from Beta Group there. So I don't know if you have anything in your records of that. And just for the record, I fully agree with your approach. It is the prudent way to do a paving program. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from Mr. Marsilio? Representative Gerber, who is back.
I am back. I'm very, very sorry. And my computer crashed, and I hope I'm not repeating something that was said, and just tell me if I am. So this is back with the 20-year bonding for the trucks. And I hope I didn't miss something. And this is probably more for Jared than Mr. Marsilio from Mr. Schmidt. So we are bonding the trucks over 20 years, but I remember at the capital planning workshop, I asked the question, could we bond, because long-term interest rates are so low, could we bond some of those projects over a longer period of time? And I think the response I got was we have sort of Board of Finance has a rule that they don't bond longer than 10 years. So is this an exception? Is this is this a change in the bonding rules that's sort of a permanent change?
Sorry, are you asking whether or not we could bond the trucks for longer than 20 years?
No, I was told about, and this was about bonding sort of building projects, which some of them are 50-year probably lives. I was told we don't bond in Fairfield longer than 10 years, I believe. Is that not true?
No, I'm not aware of that.
I asked the question of the chairman of the Board of Finance. I believe he said that we do not bond longer than 10 years, and I'll ask him. I'll send him an email.
Are you talking about for heavy equipment, or are you or something
I took
else?
it to mean for anything, because if we can bond it for heavy equipment, we should be able to bond it for a renovation of a building, right?
Yeah, I know. Our typical bonding term is 20 years. As far as there may have been some question and some debate about whether or not we should be bonding heavy equipment for 20 years. I think the board and others were persuaded by Mr. Marsilio's plan, and that if you do this in the right way, that you can get 20 years and 30 years out of some of these pieces of equipment. So it's appropriate to bond them over 20 years.
Absolutely. Then I misunderstood the capital planning workshop, because I thought it was a Board of Finance rule to bond over a 10-year period. So I will double check and try to figure out what it was that I heard.
Jared, I have all my files here, so I have the policy on bonding for capital purchases that was distributed. And what the policy that's in place now says, the following list recommends the bonding period for capital expenditures: 20 years for building and infrastructure projects, and 10 years for equipment and certain non-recurring vehicles. 3 years for hardware and variable roofs and other similar projects. So we had a long discussion on this, and so I explained how in the past I have found that these vehicles that we were asking for in the capital plan last 20 years. They're heavy equipment, and if properly maintained and properly
Yeah.
used.
Mr. Marsilli, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I agree with what you're saying. You did say this earlier. I'm not disagreeing with that at all. I was just questioning whether or not there's a change in the policy, and if there is, then I think it makes sense, especially in today's environment.
Well,
But I thought yeah.
There's not a change in the policy, but they did see that it was acceptable in this instance to use a 20-year bond. That's just what they came up with. They agreed with me.
So then they'll have to backfill the policy then, I guess. But
well, the policy is a little bit loose. It says it's recommended. It's not cast in tablets of stone. And so that was going to be their approach.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Schmidt. I thought in the capital planning workshop, maybe it's what they were showing everything as 10 years, and maybe that sort of makes it look less, makes it look worse than it is for the future bonding needs.
So, Mr. Gerber, I think what you might be talking about is we laid it out as a 10-year plan. So when we did the waterfall and we were, trying to project what our needs were, our capital needs were, we were projecting out over 10 years. I'm not sure if that's what.
Okay. I don't want to waste. I think I must have misheard. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else with questions from Mr. Marsilio or Mr. Schmidt? Nope, seeing none. Thank you both very much for joining us tonight to answer some questions and fill us in. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So that's it for our committee presentations. I want to remind everyone we will, after we end this meeting, each of the members will call into their committee meetings, and the numbers for those meetings are on the last page of the agenda, the warning for this meeting. It may not necessarily be the same phone number you called in last time, so just check that number. And members of the public are invited to call in as well. So thank you very much. We'll see you next Monday at the RTM meeting. Thank you.